Welcome to another episode of Room for a Podcast. Of course, I'm Brittany and I have another amazing guest on today's episode, Coach Nkrumah. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
That's good. I'm glad you were able to come on the show. You're super flexible with me, but I'm glad we're able to meet up and I can hear your story, your journey.
For
Um,
sure, for
so,
sure, for sure.
so like first off, like what made you get into coaching? I see your shirt says personal development and therapy. That's like I live by it. I live by that.
Coaching is not what I do. Coaching is who I am. So I became a coach without even knowing what a personal development coach was. So years ago, many moons ago, I was involved in a lot of crazy things. I grew up in inner city South Philadelphia. I had a lot of trauma. My father was murdered on my front steps while I was in the house waiting for him with a gift. So I've dealt with some extreme trauma that led me the wrong way. When I finally decided, I don't want to, I want to be there. I want to do something different. I did a whole 180 and I completely changed my life. But since my life before was so wild, when I changed, it became a big topic of discussion, like in my city. Like, there's no way in the world this fool is now this positive individual. And I thank God for my crazy years because it afforded me to become who I am today. So because of who I was, a lot of brothers who were caught up in the street and really didn't want to be that way, but had no idea how to change, begin to just come to me and ask questions. And so I would just constantly talking to brothers over and over, and brothers would be coming back over and over. And, all I could do was just give them what I had, but that's just what I did. So I felt because of things that I was a part of in the past, I felt like it was my duty to help other people change and better the community since I took a part in destroying the community. And so the more and more brothers came to me, I just gave them everything I had up until I felt like I didn't have any more. It's like I don't sometimes they ask me some questions that I don't have no answers to.
Yeah.
And from there, I began to study psychology because I wanted to understand the human mind and why we do some of the things we do. In particular, why we do things we actually don't want to do and why we're living lives that we don't want to live. So I began to study psychology and I began to add what I learned in psychology to how I was helping these brothers. Again, I didn't look at myself as a coach. I just was just helping people who came my way.
Yeah.
And I was just learning what I could in order to be better in doing that. And then I stumbled across Jim Rohn. That was my introduction to personal development. And I became aware of what a personal development coach was. And I said, oh, this is what I've been doing for the past 5, 6 years already. And then I just began to dig deeper into everything that I could find personal development. But that was my introduction to personal development coaching was not something I desired to do. It was something that was just in me to do. That's why I say it's not what I do, it's who I am.
I like his statement. I like his statement. So I'm gonna go back to. So how old were you when you said your father was killed and you
I
were
was
waiting?
10. I
You were
was 10.
10.
Yes.
And another statement you said was super powerful. You said you want to go help fix the streets because you were taking part in like destroying the streets. So that's like
Yeah.
super powerful because some people, yeah, they'll take part in destroying it, and then sometimes once they get back on, once they get on track and start to live a better life, they just like leave it all behind. They don't go back
Yeah.
to
Oh,
repair.
I have many of conversations with. I was just on the phone with a brother of mine just yesterday having this argument. So I have many conversations with brothers who got out and aren't doing anything. And
Yeah.
I constantly tell them they're part of the problem. They don't like to hear that, but if you are not actively part of any solution, then you are a part of the problem.
Definitely. That is so true. It's funny. The first person I came across was Jim Rohn as well. Like I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. And it was really nothing there for me. And everything that I was surrounded by was like, poverty. drugs, gang, alcoholism, like just things that wasn't going to help me thrive. And I left when I was like maybe 18 to go to college. I went to TSU up in Nashville, Tennessee. And when I got there, I was surrounded by all these like educated black folks. And I was just telling my nieces that actually yesterday, because they're up visiting. Right now I'm in upstate New York, and they're visiting from Memphis. And I was telling them, like, when I went to TSU, I was surrounded by all these black people who were doing things like they had confidence, they were educated, they were smart, they were like, giving and loving, and it inspired me and it made me believe like, okay, maybe I can do something better with my life. And it was like, it was after that, it was like, it was out from there because once I saw it with my own eyes and I was around it, okay, it's possible. But even then, I still didn't have the blueprint on how to like
Mm-hmm.
really live life until 2015. In 2015, a friend of mine introduced me to Jim Rohn, and I watched his lecture. It was about maybe 2.5 hours long. I think it's called "Mediocre Life" or "Live This Mediocre Life." I can't really think of the name. I'm butchering the title,
That's
but
fine.
it's on
That's fine.
it's on YouTube. But I watched it. I'm taking all these notes, like 10 pages of notes, right? And I'm thinking like I've been doing this all wrong. And at the time,
Mm-hmm.
this was 2015, so I had to be like maybe 23. I'm 31 now. So I'm like 23, I think. And I'm like, why no one told me this? Like, I've been living life all wrong. But
A
even
lot of people don't
then,
know. A lot of people
yeah,
don't know.
they don't. And I got the information, and it was still like a struggle to really grasp what he was saying. But some
Mm-hmm.
of those concepts I used early on, like um, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because at the time I was in the Navy, I was like the lowest ranking in the Navy. Had like a job that I hated, like just cleaning and moving stuff around. Like I didn't have a specific rate yet until later on. But after watching that video, I'm like, okay, work harder on myself than I do at my job. So I'm there 15 minutes earlier than everybody else. My uniform's squared away, my boots are shiny, so I'm ready to go. And from that point, after that, my career shot off because it wasn't about the
Mm-hmm.
job. It was about me. How can I be a better person?
Mm-hmm.
And again, still like stumbled along the way. But from then 23 to now 31, so much of what he said, like life is like the seasons, it makes sense now because I've been through
Mm-hmm.
seasons,
Yeah.
and I'm able to understand that every season pass, nothing is forever, and
Mm-hmm.
like uh every opportunity that I get, I need to maximize it.
Yeah.
Don't let my springs pass, as he said. Like maximize the opportunity. And when I came across your, it was a TikTok you made about when you heal from trauma, like the ambition kind of fade
Mm-hmm.
away. And I was just talking about that too. I'm like, oh, I have to reach out to him because I noticed that maybe 2 years ago when I started working on myself. I'm like, man, I'm not I'm not as hungry as I thought. Like I'm not as hungry as I was before, but it was just that the trauma that fueled me was no longer there. So I had to find new, like a more creative way to continue to move forward. But
Yeah. You begin to want to find things that are meaningful for you.
yep.
Because we can do a lot of alleged great things, in particular in this capitalistic society. So anything that makes money is something that is great. So well, according to this society, I'm saying it's great. So we start chasing things most of the time that has nothing to do with who. First of all, we don't know who we are. Nobody that I know, nobody I've ever been around was actually raised to ask the question, who am I? So with
Hmm.
Jim Rohn, right, the first thing I heard Jim Rohn say, it wasn't even a speech. It was like an amalgamation of a bunch of different speakers and just quotes that they were saying. And his just jumped out at me. And then I started listening to his speeches. But he said that the question isn't what you have to do to be successful. The question is, who do you have to be? And like you saying, he changed the way you looked at everything. That one quote changed the way I looked at everything because I was always a doer. In fact, I got this great book by a black sister, Radiah Rose. It's called "Being Is the New Doing." I suggest this book be read by everybody.
Write that
So
down.
yeah, so that shifted because I was always a doer. I was always a strategist and forecasting. And actually, I went to college for finance, and that's a part of my story as I help people with my course and finding and finding and monetizing their purpose. When I went to college, you go to your counselor in the beginning, they ask you, what do you want to major in? And my response was, well, what can I do where I make the most money? Because I grew up in poverty. My father
Mhm.
was the breadwinner. My mom was a stay at home mom. So once that happened, life changed drastically. Now my mother is trying to raise three children on her own after losing her middle school sweetheart. So life was a lot. It was way different. So that poverty, that trauma, created that ambition in me
Mhm.
to have money, not because I want money for any particular thing, but because I never want to feel this poor again. And
I
that
know, right?
mindset. And what's crazy is a lot of times people don't even recognize that oftentimes a pursuit of money is a poor mindset. But so that's a whole nother thing. We can get back to that if you want. But
We
so
can.
so I asked the counselor asked me, what I want to major in. I'm like, what can I do where I make the most money? It's the only thing that mattered. And she like, well, you have to do something that's in finance. Can you are you good at math? I'm like, baby, I do math in my sleep. This is nothing. But when I look back at that, I think the question should have been more of, what do I love? What can I major in that facilitates my purpose? What can I major in that allows me to illuminate who I am? But since I wasn't even aware of who I am, in particular in that age of my life, I don't think I even knew the difference between an introvert or extrovert. I probably never even heard of it. And for me to be an extremely extroverted person working in finance makes no sense.
None at all.
So when we're not cognizant of who we are, then we start making all these trauma decisions. And we have all of these ambitions that don't even align the least bit with who we are. So
Mhm.
as soon as I got into college, we had to study a different finance guru, and we came across Ray DeLeo. Now, I always say this, I have no idea why. It was something about Ray DeLeo that I just felt like, yo, I'm smarter than this guy. And it's not like he came off dumb. Maybe he just came off as a regular guy, that did something amazing. But I just felt like, yo, I can do more than him. And so that became my ambition. I want to own my own hedge fund. I want to manage billions of dollars and have billions of dollars for myself. But again, all that stemmed from my poverty. As I began working on me and getting closer and closer and closer to purpose, March 28th, 2013 was my last day as an analyst. I just walked away. I just I just walked away from a field where there is no ceiling on the money that you can make at all.
Mhm.
I was on my way. I definitely would have had my hedge fund. I walked away because
Mhm.
first of all, I hated it. That's first of all, I hated it. Even though I'm good with numbers, I don't want to sit with numbers all day, every day. That doesn't fit my personality. It doesn't align with my purpose. It doesn't align with my anointing and my calling. And so I just walked away and began to walk into my purpose. And so just to facilitate what you were saying, that ambition that I had for the money was totally gone because I was only focused on purpose now. And I didn't
Yeah.
care about the poverty that I experienced when I was young anymore. I wasn't trying to make sure I have money so the lights wouldn't be cut off anymore. I was healed from all of that. And now my not that don't have any ambitions, but my ambitions switched from my trauma ambitions to purposeful ambitions.
Definitely, I understand that. For me, growing up, I was always like an entrepreneur. As a young kid, I think I was maybe some elementary school. My grandmother would buy me like a bag of Hershey Kisses, and I would take them out and sell like 10 for $1. Just to have
Mm-hmm.
like some because it was my family was poor. It was I'm one of six. My mom working a lot. My dad, active alcoholism, so not really holding up his part of the bills or of his presence, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and we still poor, still broke, still lights off, all that. But anyway, and then even in high school, I don't know if you. Well, I'm not. How old are you? If you don't mind me asking.
41.
41. So when I was in high school, it was like the chip juice person. So I had like a duffel bag full of like chips, juices, honey buns, like all that stuff that I would sell it. So
Okay.
I would babysit my little cousins, And instead of them paying my aunt and other older cousin paying me, I'm like, hey, go to the store with your stamps and buy me like all this stuff. Like not buying stamps from them, but hey,
I know what
don't
you.
pay me
Yeah,
in
no.
cash. Yeah. So every day I'm making like $100 here, $100 there every few days. And I don't know where it came from. It was me. As I got older, I realized it came from like poor poverty, trauma, poor like a poor mindset because I didn't have anything, so I wanted to get things. I'm like, how can I get it? And throughout the years, I always had kind of entrepreneurial things happening. And I was in the Navy up until December of 2022, and it was okay. But again, as I started to heal myself and to just find out who I am, or at least attempt to work on the path of who I am and start to walk in
Hmm.
my purpose, I'm like, this isn't really for me. And then got married, had a daughter, all this. I'm like, I can't imagine being away from my family, 10 months at a time. Now, when I'm single, maybe I can do it. But even if I was still single, I started to find out what my purpose was. Instead of me trying to chase the money and have my bills paid, my creator has taken care of me like my entire life. So I'm like, why am I stressing about it now? Why am I worried? And everyone's like, "Oh, you sure you want to get out? Like, you're a good sailor." I'm like, "Oh no, I feel like I could be doing more, with my life instead of being confined into this small box of things that y'all will allow me to do." And I just made the decision. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm get out. I'm done. I want to do something else." And even for college, right? So I enrolled in college last semester because I dropped out back in what 2014. I dropped out because I started working a job, and of course I'm making money now. So why would I go
Hmm.
to college if I'm making money?
Yeah.
Poverty mindset. I dropped out. So anyway, last semester I started going to taking classes, and I chose computer science. And you know why I chose it? I'm like, oh, they make a lot of money. I should do that. What? Even though I know for sure that I should be working in my purpose, and that and terribly. But again, sometimes my head is a little hard, so I got to like knock it a few times to realize like
No, that's all of
you
us.
going the wrong
Well, see,
way.
one of the things in life, like if you read any of my books, man, one of the words you want to see over and over and over again is intention,
Hmm.
intentionality, intentionality. When we're not intentional every day, it's easy to just fall back into old patterns. So it's not
Hmm.
that you need to hit your head to find out. It's just that we have to wake up and be intentional every single day. So
Yeah.
that's something, like every morning, I'm intentional. Like, all right, first of all, how do I want to feel today? I'm big on how your thoughts affect your physiology. So
Hmm.
how do I want to feel today? If I wake up today, I want to feel grateful. I'm going to take that gratefulness with me all day long. I'm going to be cognizant of that all day long. So when anything pulls me off center, bring myself back, especially driving around here in Charlotte, the way these folks drive, I can move into anger, which is my most comfortable emotion.
Hmm.
I think a lot of men probably that anger is the most comfortable emotion, that we can feel. So instead you can't help how you instantly respond, but you can help if you stay there. So as soon as I feel it, I go, oh, bring it back. I want to feel grateful today. I want to feel joy today. I want to feel peace. And so I'm intentional about that. I'm intentional about, all right, what am I going to take full control of today? Because every day there's something that we have 100% control of. Are there factors outside of our control? Yes, there are. But if you take control of 100% of what you can control 100% of, you take control of your life drastically. So what am I going to take full control of? Um, what am I going to accomplish today? Because there's a task that I want to accomplish. So every day I'm being intentional. And before I make any decisions, I'm being intentional about, all right, why am I making this decision? So if I was to take a class, I would be thinking immediately, all right, hold on, before I take this class, I'm being intentional about every single thing that I do, every part of my life. And when we begin to incorporate that, that makes it easier for us to not fall back into those patterns, because our patterns are, this is what's crazy, our patterns don't really become a mind thing, they become a body thing. our
Yeah.
our body will do it before our mind even thinks, or even if our mind can't think. Now you 31, I don't know if 31, can you, were you around for house phones?
Yeah. Yeah. I was.
Okay, so I remember like times I would ask my mother for somebody's phone number, and she'll be trying to recite it and she can't figure it out, and she would say, "Hand me the phone," and I would give her the phone, and she would just start dialing,
Mm-hmm.
even though her mind could not remember the number. Her body could dial the number.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we have to be so intentional with our mind to reprogram our body, because our body is going to lead us to just doing the same old patterns that we're used to. And so that's probably one of the reasons why your body just led you right into that pattern. Oh, let me go get this money, and because of the lack of intentionality.
Yeah. For me, it was like I think it was an actual winter, but it was also like an emotional winter.
Okay.
Because I think it was like October 22 is when I last wore my uniform, and I had been doing it for like 8 years. So I was like, all right, who am I? What do I do now? You know, because
Mm-hmm.
that was like my
Identity.
crap, my shell, my identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even though I was working on myself, it's still I was working on myself, but that blanket of identity of being a sailor was still there. So I removed that, and it was like I was so vulnerable. Like, who am I? What do I do? You know, yeah, I talk
Mm-hmm.
all this big game, but who am I really? Like, how can I actually walk in that purpose, and my actions show what I'm learning? Um, and then it was a rough period, but again, like you said, the awareness and being intentional. A month into taking classes, I was aware instantly. I'm like, this wasn't the
This ain't
decision
it.
I should have made, you know. But it's all good because at least I'm aware, and I realized it right then instead of waiting 2 3 years down the line and being miserable, you know. Because my thing is, like I tell family and friends all the time, like, hey, you know, when we're learning things, we can always easily fall back into old patterns and behaviors. But how long does it take for us to become aware and step out of it? It's like the
Mm-hmm.
awareness piece, you know, like you said, being grateful. You you might get angry for a moment in traffic, but instantly aware. Okay, I want to feel grateful
Mm-hmm.
today. Like, how can I show gratitude? And it makes me think of this guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's big on meditation,
That's
and
my.
ex- you got his book. Yeah, I'm about to start reading that tomorrow. It's over on my bookshelf. But
I got all of his books,
I think I have
and
I have like 3 or 4 of them.
yeah, you got becoming supernatural.
Yep,
Okay, yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah.
that.
I do the meditations twice a day.
See, I gotta get to. I haven't done like the super long ones. Like my wife bought me 3 of the meditations like 2 Christmases ago, but to do the longer ones every day has been somewhat of a challenge. But again, I'll get there. It won't.
Yeah, you just gotta work on them. My very first time, I think I probably did 5 minutes, because typically Dr. Joe's meditations are like 44 minutes long.
Hmm.
And yeah, so the very first time I did it, it was like 5 minutes. It's like, yo, I can't. How am I supposed to get all the way through this? And then, like, I think that the very next time I forced myself to do the whole thing, right? And
Hmm.
so I'm like, okay, I got this. And then the third time was like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and so it made me
So
think of that
it's
when
a
we were talking about
process.
your mom dialing a number. Like even
Yeah.
sometimes with me, I can type my pin for my debit card in, but if somebody asks me what it is, I'm like, oh, I have to think of what the pin looks like. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the pin
Yeah.
pad looks like, and, you know,
Yeah.
because I
Mm-hmm.
had the habit of it, and
Yeah.
that's what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about as well. Like
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
walking in what you want your life to look like, but
Mm-hmm.
basically, you know, your it's like a thought and a feeling. But we don't have to get into all that. I don't want to lose my train of thought because you
Yeah.
said because I will be going on a tangent and I can't take up too much of your time because I love talking about developing and like learning new ways to live and just being better. But something you said was naturally men automatically default to anger. Why do you think that is in your experience?
I think it's well, for one, that's the only emotion we're allowed to express from children.
Hmm.
So a little boy is not allowed to be sad. A little boy is not allowed to cry. A little boy is not allowed to be emotional, but he better fight. So that's the first thing, So imagine, right? You are 2.5, 3 years old, and every time you cry, adults are upset. So little girls are allowed to cry, but with little boys, there's an idea of he cries too much for a boy. What does that even mean?
Hmm.
So this is embedded in so many of our minds that there's a level of crying that's acceptable for a boy, And once you pass that level, whatever that is, it's different with any, depending on who we're talking to. So the little boy, he can be hurt, and if he cries, the adults around him are telling him to man up, and he ain't even a adolescent, let alone a man. And the older you get, you might have older brothers or older cousins or even your father who might hit you for showing emotions. Like, man,
Hmm.
shut up, toughen up, toughen up. And so we grow up holding in all of our emotions. But the only time we are allowed to, and I don't think people look at it this way, because we just continue to just do things that everybody else has passed down. But when you're telling the boy it's okay for him to protect and okay for him to fight, what you're telling him is it's okay for him to be angry, because you need to be angry in order to want to beat somebody up. So that's
Hmm.
the only emotion after probably 2.5, 3 years old that a male is allowed to express. He's not allowed to express any other vulnerable emotion. So every emotion he feels, he turns it back into anger some way, somehow. So if somebody teases him, the emotion he feels is shame.
Yeah.
But so, but I don't like feeling shame, so I'm going to turn on my anger. The emotion you might feel is embarrassment. I don't like how embarrassment feel. I'm comfortable with anger, so we're going to fight. The emotion he feels is like or love for a little girl. He hits her. So this is what happens when we don't allow young boys to go through their full range of God-given emotions, and we
Hmm.
force them to be a shell of themselves. So that's what so many men have grown up with. They 20, 30 years old, never been allowed to be vulnerable, never been allowed to express any other emotions than anger. So that's the most comfortable thing that we can always go back to, because
Yeah.
anger will never feel bad. Because this is something I realized, right? In the streets, I lost a lot of friends. And this is when I really, really recognized this. In the streets, I lost a lot of friends. After I got out some years ago, a friend of mine had brain cancer. He ended up succumbing to the brain cancer. And I was just messed up. I was just so messed up. And I'm sitting and I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, I done lost so many people in my life, so many people who were just as close to me as him. And I've never felt this way. Why is this grief so unbearable? And what I realized is I always lost people to gun violence.
Mm.
And when I lose somebody to gun violence, I have somebody to be angry at. And in my anger, I could also want to seek revenge. And when I'm in my anger and my revenge, you know what I'm not feeling? Grief. So
Hmm.
when my friend died from cancer, I had nobody to be angry at. And all I was left with was the grief. And this is the first time, at least from since my dad. Well, my dad was a victim of gun violence too. So this was the first time I really just had to sit with grief and
Hmm.
not be able to turn on my anger. I mean, I know people say fuck cancer, but that's not it's not the
It's
same
not.
anger.
No, it's
So
not.
that anger just becomes a comfort for us in some ways. Like it keeps us from feeling anything that makes us feel bad. So
Hmm.
we turn that on whenever we feel something other than anger. Whenever we feel an emotion that we feel like it's not an emotion for a man, whenever we feel an emotion that we never were supposed to feel in the first place, or an emotion that's uncomfortable, it's easy for us to just do what the comfortable thing is and just get angry.
That's true. I can relate, and I know people I know personally. I've seen it come up, instead of like feeling their emotions and grief or sadness, just just be angry or doing things violently because they're upset. But instead of feeling
Mm-hmm.
that the true emotion, they show it as violent or
Yeah,
angry or
because
pissed
that
off.
emotion hurts, so we want to do
Hmm.
anything to get away from that emotion.
Yeah.
And I mean, you'll see that with men and women when somebody dies. People get real snappy with other
Hmm.
people, and it's not them. They are trying not to cope with that pain. And it's just a hard thing, man.
How how old were you, and how long did it take for you to like acknowledge that it's okay for men to cry, to be sad, instead of just being angry all the time?
Whew, how old was I? I probably was early 30s.
Okay.
I probably was early 30s. Um, I can't pinpoint the exact time. I just start when I just start questioning everything.
Mhm.
So I read Dr. Joy DeGruz's book, Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I think it came out in like 2007. when um when I read that book, like I can't remember a lot of quotes from the book, but I believe a good book changes you. It's not for you to remember everything about it. The one thing that book made me do was question everything about my life. I just put the book down and I just was like, why am I the way I am? I was just questioning everything. And so along that journey, somewhere I stumbled across like, you know what? I do have emotions and I'm faking my emotions. I'm acting like I don't have emotions. And the crazy part is, as a man, we are acting like we don't have emotions in front of men who have emotions. So we
Yeah.
are all feel the same things and acting like we don't. So no, I don't have um a specific time. I know I guess it's around it had to be before 2013 because I wrote a book, Broken Pillars, and in the book I have a chapter titled "Let Me Cry." In fact, that chapter is on my website. You can read for free.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think I heard a pastor preaching about Jesus weeping, and I am just like diabolical with like little stuff, and I go down crazy rabbit holes. So something about Jesus weeping made me want to just look up crying in the eye. What is going on? And so I in my studies I found that we have three different types of tears. We have protective tears. So whenever dust or anything flies into your eye is going to tear up in order for you to flush that out and protect your eye.
Mhm.
Then we have tears that actually release endorphins in order for us to not feel pain as much as we would. Which is why if you stub your toe, you cut yourself or whatever, you can cry. That cry literally releases hormones in your body to reduce the pain. But then we have emotional tears, and this is where men lose out at because we're not allowed to cry. Our emotional tears, like every mental illness, is categorized as a chemical imbalance. So
Mhm.
something is off in your body. Your emotional tears are literally God's natural way of when you're dealing with something psychological, something emotional, that when you cry, it's literally balancing out your hormones to keep you from going into those chemical imbalances. So crying helps you to be a whole human being. But
Yeah.
most of the time, men aren't allowed to cry. So we are just a ball of crazy, raging emotions and chemical imbalances that we never got a chance to release. So all that to say, I know it was around that time. So I started studying, the eye and crying and all of that. And
Mhm.
then so I wrote about how the necessity of men crying and the men being emotional. So I know it was before 2013 where I came across the revelation that, you know what, we have emotions and it's okay for us to express them.
Yeah. I can 100% relate and agree with that. And I'm not a man. I was just a person who never really cried up until some years ago. So in 2019, March 2019, I got sober. So before that, I drank a lot. Obviously, I'm a
Well, I
sober
don't know.
alcoholic.
Obviously, I don't know you.
No, not obviously, but like, so I am a sober alcoholic. So I don't drink anymore.
Okay.
But
All
before
right.
that, prior to March 2019, every emotion, happiness, I drank. Sadness, I drink. Boredom, I drink. Everything, I drink. So for for years, like in my 20s, I wasn't emotional, crying and like that because I'm just drinking.
Mm,
And I remember even as like a year, like a kid, I didn't really. I used to cry a lot, like when I was, 5 or 6 that I can remember, and I remember my family telling me, "Oh, you used to be a little crybaby," and I was thinking like, at what point did I like? What happened? At what point did I like stop crying as much? And again, as an adult, I know like as more memories come back to me, it's just like, you know, people telling me, "Oh, stop crying so much," or needs not
Mm-hmm.
being met, and things aren't happening, or
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not getting the needs that I need that I require at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So just not really crying. I remember like maybe it was in middle school, and my brother on my dad's side, his mom died. It was like my godmom. She died. And I didn't cry. I was just like numb. And at the time I didn't think nothing of it. But as an adult, that's insane. Like where are those tears at? So like I'm just numb. And roll around to 2019, I started to get sober. I'm rebuilding a relationship with my creator, my God, and I'm not drinking. So all these emotions that I had like balled up, compartmentalized, they come out when things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I meet my wife, and sometimes I have little tears, and I try to wipe them away. She's like, "It's okay to cry, like that's normal." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm only emotional because I'm PMSing," and she's like, "You don't have to blame it on that, because she's open with her emotions. I wasn't at the time, and again, as I continue to grow and try to like question like who am I? Why am I this way? Like the same way you did. I'm like, it's normal. That's a normal emotion to cry. And if I'm not crying, then I'm making things worse for myself. I'm creating a illness, and I'm gonna get sicker quicker
Mm-hmm.
because these things are being balled up.
Like,
I'm not
that's a
regulating.
natural thing. Your eye produces tears. That means you should cry. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just so simple, man. Your eyes produce tears. That means you should
Exactly.
cry.
So now, I mean, what's up nowadays when things come up? If I'm gonna cry, I'm gonna cry about it. When I'm in therapy, even when I first started going to therapy, I'll be talking about situations and I get little tears and I like suck them up and wipe them. And she's like,
I cry. I
that's
cry all the
normal.
time now.
It's
I
okay.
cry. I cry. I think I cry a little too much now. I be crying. I be crying watching TV. I just teared up watching Billy Baker die on All American.
And like my good friend, he's a guy, and he's in recovery as well, and he's super emotional. Like we'll be talking about something that's like touching, and he'll just be crying. I'm crying. I'm like, man, I love you. He's like my brother from another mother. Like,
Mm,
and I like to see that he's open with his emotions. He's not gonna try to put on this big tough guy act. Like he's like, I'm human. I'm gonna have
mm,
tears. I'm gonna cry. I'm
yeah.
gonna feel my emotions, and they pass, and that's that. And even my birthday was actually Sunday, and normally I mentioned this on one of my TikToks. Like my wife does like extravagant things. I don't even know what it is until I open it. But this time I knew what it was. But she asked my nephew. She's like, "Hey, should we wrap Aunt Nee's gift or give it to her like this?" He's like, "We should wrap it so she can feel like a kid again." So when she's telling me that, like I had even instantly my eyes watered up and had little tears. And my daughter, and my niece, said like, "What's wrong? Are you sad?" I'm like, "No, I'm not sad." That was like really sweet of him, and it touched my heart. It was just like so sweet that I want you to feel like a kid again. And people who haven't worked on their inner child stuff, they might not even really get it.
Mm,
But people who are working or already worked on that stuff, like that core memory, core emotional stuff, they probably understand where I'm coming from. Why I had tears because I'm like, man, that's
yeah.
so sweet of him. Like that's super sweet of him. And I'm super grateful that I'm able to experience those emotions now and be aware of it and embrace it and just let it pass instead of
Because you
me
know what's
like,
crazy? I didn't even think about that until just now, just listening to that. If we don't allow ourselves to cry, we miss joyful moments
mm-hmm,
because that's like the fullest expression of what you felt in the moment, and it caused you to cry. But if you are tensing up and making sure that you never cry, that means you won't even allow yourself to feel the full expression of even joy and happiness. Never even thought about that.
yeah. So and all this stuff is I'm learning and I'm doing. Not to just only be a doer, but I can read some. You can read all of these books, right? But never act out on what you're reading, or never
Mm-hmm.
have a chance to what's what I'm looking for, uh, act out what you're learning. That's not the right term, but like I appreciate that I like heard these speakers, read the books, and when things come up in my life, I can use those tools I'm learning and like all right,
Apply. Is that the word you were
apply.
using?
I'm looking for
Looking for?
apply. Yes, I'm
Okay.
able to apply these things in my life. But
Mm-hmm.
you said so. You wrote your first book in 2000 13 or 12. I think you said it.
Well, that book was 2013. I wrote a book every year after I started. But
Okay.
I think my first book was 2000. Ooh, I don't know, baby. I forgot.
Oh, it's all good. But you're an
I
author,
don't
so
know.
that's super amazing
Yeah,
because you're writing about your
yeah,
experiences, so people can
yeah.
actually go get the book, read about your life and what you think about it, and they can apply it. Like.
It's someone. It's not. I haven't wrote like an autobiography or nothing like that. I
Mhm.
do use some of my personal experiences. In that book, Broken Pillars, I use a lot of experiences that I had with men that I was coaching, because
Okay.
that's what really led to the writing of that book. And I was in church one day, and it was a men's meeting, or like men's gathering, whatever. And so the head of the men's meeting was like, man, we got to be the pillars of the community. We can't be broken pillars. And I was like, again, I go down crazy rabbit holes. So it only takes for me to hear a word and then I lose my mind. I'm like, broken pillars. I'm like, oh shoot. So then that just started rumbling in my mind and made me think about all of the men that I was coaching at the time. Because that book is more of like a relationship book. It
Mhm.
made me think about all the men who were coming to me because they loved the person that they was with while simultaneously destroying their relationship at the same time. So that's the one constant I realized, was that they were all in love, they were all destroying their relationship, and the reason they were all destroying their relationship was because they were all broken.
I should get that book for my brother.
Yeah, they were all broken. So that's the broken pillars. The subtitle was understanding the men supporting the weight of their own families without dealing with their own brokenness. So it's for both men, and it's really for like couples to read together. But a woman can read it as a single woman, man can read it as a single man. Is for us to really just understand, in particular, us men, to understand ourselves more, because most of us just don't do the introspection. So
Mhm.
from all of the things, like the most common things that were coming up in all of my sessions that I was having with men at the time, I put in that book and start breaking down, all right, this is what's going on, this is why, and this is what you can do as a man to change that. But then also in the book, it's like, all right, if you're in a relationship, the woman you're reading this is what you can do to help facilitate that. First of all, understanding, because when you don't understand somebody, everything that they do can seem crazy. If you see a
Mhm.
kid that's in a market, they just knocking stuff over, you're going to judge the kid, you're going to judge the mom, you're going to judge the dad. But then it's like, but then you understand that child's autistic. Oh, now your whole perception changes.
Yep.
So understanding is just so important. So that book is helping men understand themselves, and then helping women understand men. That way we can successfully, uh, build together.
Coexist and integrate. Because
Yes.
if everyone's only looking from their own lenses, then how can you integrate your life or your
Mm-hmm.
emotions or a situation if you're only looking at it from your point of view? You have to be able
Mm-hmm.
to look at, oh, well, how do they feel? Why do they feel that way? Why do they do the things this certain way? Like, where did they come from? Their childhood, past relationships. It's like it's so many different factors that comes into play when integrating or even just
Yeah.
understanding the another
Yes.
person. Um, and so you said you've been coaching men since 2013. So is this like free
No, 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 no,
program?
no, 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 no. I've been coaching men since about 2007.
Oh, you've been doing this for a while. You're like a pro at it. You're a vet.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've been doing this since like 2007.
Okay.
Unofficially, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing for the first 4 or 5 years, but that's when I started. And
Yeah.
then around the 2012, 13-ish era is when I started doing the psychology and coming to personal development, and understood what I was doing, and then begin to equip myself better to be the best coach that I could be. But yeah, I started doing it in 2007.
Okay. So do you like speak at schools and stuff as well, or
I
do you
I
only
speak,
coach?
yeah, I speak all over the place. I speak, and I just spoke at was it elementary school, a middle school in New York, but I spoken at colleges. I had a couple of books that are used in curriculum in colleges and everything.
That's
Yeah, so
good. That's cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. When I came across your page, I was like, I got to get him on the show because I know several women that I get on the show, but it's important for me to get men and women to like share their point of view because like personally, like with my brother, and I'm not sure he doesn't mind me talking about our conversations, but we'll be talking about something, and he'll go to like, "You don't understand because you're a woman,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, "You're right. I don't really understand what it's like for you, but I'm just speaking of like other people's experiences and what's read, and what I read about statistics and all that. And sometimes people need to receive information from
Yeah.
someone who looks like them. And some people,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm sure you can, and I can as well, because you go down a rabbit hole, you find out, you seek information. I can receive the message from, I don't care if it's a tree. I can receive the message from anyone. I don't care
Oh
what,
yeah.
And other
Mm-hmm.
people initially they need to receive a message from someone that somewhat resembles them or been through what they've been through. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I gotta get this guy on my show.
Oh
Like
yeah,
super important.
I'm gonna learn from anybody. Like I said, like I mentioned Radiah Rose book. That's a whole woman, but that book is phenomenal. I have at a men's group that I ran. The men had to read this book. like
Hmm.
listen, I understand this is a woman and y'all might be a little no, y'all got to read this book. And we're going to discuss what's up in this book. Now there is always a point where you're going to need somebody specifically like you,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
that's not what you need at all times. I'm gonna learn from kids. I'm gonna learn from white folks. I'm gonna learn from
Hmm.
Indian. I'm gonna learn from anybody. Now, I definitely, got to a place where, and this is sadly, I was looking for black male personal development teachers who were teaching, you know, to black men, and I couldn't find any. And so
And that's when you stepped in.
that's when I really began to like amp it up. Like, yeah, like first I just wrote, just ambiguously. And then my last two books were specific to black men. Like we definitely need some writing that understands the nuance
Hmm.
of black maleness, in particular in America, because it's easy
Hmm.
to just talk about personal development as this thing that you can do where there's no obstacles. It's a whole
No,
different thing when we're talking about personal development and using our personal development to overcome the obstacles. And so that's what I definitely begin to do with my last two books.
that's good because I'm glad you stepped in. Like how usually, oh, there's a service that needs to be done, but no one's doing it, and you're
Mm-hmm.
the qualified person. So you stepped in and became that person that you were looking for other people.
Yeah.
Because again, we can develop we can develop whatever, do learn everything and do those things, but the obstacles that are there in place, who's going to teach us how to navigate those? The only person that can teach
Mm-hmm.
us is people who've navigated that themselves,
Yes.
to show the ropes. So I
Yes.
get that, and because for a while I was thinking, initially I was like, I can learn from anybody, but again, like you was looking for someone who's
Mm-hmm.
specific that can understand, your lenses and your perspective. And again, same for me, but I'm like, let me get on the internet, let me find, let me go on TikTok, let me find some people
Mm-hmm.
to speak and um just to understand. Because again, like I said, I was compartmentalized for a long time. Everything was like in a box. I didn't look at the poverty part. I didn't look at the blackness part of it. I just wanted to get ahead in life. And then
Mm-hmm.
when everything started to come together
It's
into
like
one, it's
it's
like
like
I got
these intersections are kicking my ass.
I got to look at every
I need
part
some
of it.
I need some intersectional help.
Yeah, I have to look at
And it's
everything.
a lot of times like people, nobody really realizes how specific their lens is. Like
Hmm.
as a man, and a pretty decent sized man, I only navigate the world as this big man. So
Hmm.
I don't know how a 5 foot, 100-pound woman feels walking through a neighborhood.
Hmm.
Like the things that I don't think about, she has to think about.
Yeah.
So it's like I had to really, sit back and look at myself sometimes. Like, dude, sometimes you are imposing, and I don't mean it because I know I'm not gonna harm anybody. But
Hmm.
my straight face looks intimidating. I always look mean and mad. Then my
Hmm.
voice also sounds a little raspy and mad, and so I had to become very conscious of my the way in which I see the world, and then how I respond to people who don't see the world like me. Because there was a time where I'd be like, well, why don't you just, and you could just, and It's like that person don't see the world the same way you do, so you can't have that conversation. You can't be. I used to be very judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was before I started studying psychology, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I started doing it, because I start getting upset when I'm talking to people, and I'm just like, yo, it's not making you know what I'm saying. I'm just like, dog, you ain't making sense to me right now, like, like, dog, just stop doing it, And then I'm like, I'm getting upset. I'm like, why do you keep making these dumb choices? And I'm just like, you know what? Maybe I'd need to learn a little more. And that's what pushed me to the psychology, like to understand people's traumas and the way different people respond to different things. And once certain things happen to an individual, that will cause them to look at everything, and so that's something that we all have to do, recognize when our lens is different. And then when our lens is so different that we need to send somebody to somebody else for help instead of trying to
Mm-hmm.
give them advice through our lens. Like
Yeah.
the way I see the world and the way somebody else see the world, it just might not. My advice through my lens might not be able to help this person, even though if it's great advice for people who are just like me. But if you're not, something different.
Also, something you said is that you have like a raspy, scary voice or whatever the case may be. But
Mm-hmm.
what you described, that's not it's not your job to tone it down because that's something that society pushed, like what
Mm-hmm.
scary looks like. And if everyone did the same work that you and I are doing, then they'll understand like
Yeah.
nothing makes something scary or mean. If a person be
Mm-hmm.
having their resting bitch face, pardon my excuse my language,
I
but
understand. I understand.
you know who said it on me? It's just that's your
That,
perspective.
yeah.
But it's not
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
job to,
Oh, I
be
ain't
all
toning it. I'm not toning it. I don't tone it down. I'm just aware of it. But yeah,
okay.
I'm not toning it down. I remember when I was young, one of my aunts, man, my aunt Lydia, one of the kindest people in the world. Love her to life. When she calls your name, it sounds like you're in trouble and you're about to get your ass whipped. Everything, like everything, like her voice is just menacing, man. Like I would always see all the kids, everybody was afraid of my aunt just because of her voice. For no, she was
Yeah.
so kind. So she lived in one end of the block, I lived in the other end. So when I was like trying to stay away from my friends, I would go to her house because nobody's going to come there looking for me. So I would go
Hmm.
down her house and walk in. She would just scream my name. Is that you? And I'll be like, yeah, it's me. I lit it. She'd be like, hey, baby. And then I just lay down on the couch and start watching TV. But yeah, so that's just something that I'm aware of in my coaching and in giving my advice. Like really trying to understand the way somebody else sees the world before I start giving them some tips or anything, because I have to learn how to remove myself as much as I can, because if you're not navigating the world the way I am, advice for somebody who does navigate the world like I am isn't for you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. So, along your journey, from coaching, but not knowing you were coaching up until now, like, what are some like the biggest takeaways that you like to keep in mind, other than navigating, the world the way you are? But like, what are some like the biggest takeaways or like the biggest important moments of your journey that like impacted you to who you are today?
Important moments. And I my mind is so analytical that I do horrible with broad questions.
Oh, okay,
Um
got it.
yeah, I'm horrible with stuff like this.
Well, what's
Um
something that like okay, therapy. You're a black man in therapy.
So
And you say you cry a
therapy
lot.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. So you gotta help me. You gotta start throwing stuff out there, because my mind just be looking for these exact things, and it's
Nah,
like,
nah.
oh, what are these exact things? But like that's the way I am.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah. So therapy. Yeah. Therapy is probably one of the number one things. Really unpacking my own trauma,
Hmm.
and how not not just understanding the trauma, but understanding what the trauma made you. I got a chapter in one of my books. It's don't let the trauma, don't be made by your trauma.
Hmm.
One of the things we do in the hood is celebrate what the trauma turned us into. And I recognize with myself, I would be like, I done been to jail. I done been shot. I could, and it's like, streets made me. And then I'm like, but shit, do I really want to be made by the streets? Do I really want to be hard because my dad died? Do I really want to? And it's like, yo, the my trauma made me something different. So the therapy definitely really unpacking what I've been through and then how that made me and then
Mhm.
unmaking myself.
Mhm.
So that's like that process, being honest about what happened, being honest about what it made me, and then
Mhm.
unmaking myself. And then now, so what I teach, right? We're reconnecting ourselves to before the trauma happened, and then we're recreating life as if, what if this trauma did not happen? What would my life have looked like? And now I'm like building that and living off of that instead of living off the trauma. That might sound real crazy, but it makes sense
No, it
when we
makes
when we're
sense.
when we're going through the course. Um, so yeah, so the therapy, that was a major turning point. Ooh, yeah, that's hard for my brain. You
It's
got any
all
more
good.
suggestions?
No, it's all
Yeah,
good. As far as
my
the therapy
mind,
part,
yeah, my mind don't work like that, man. It's so hard. People ask me questions, I'll just be like, I be stuck sometimes. Like, I need a specific question that I can give a specific answer. Man, it'd be hard.
that's all
It'd
good. As
be
far as
hard.
the therapy part of it, I remember. So right now I'm in Syracuse, New York, but I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, and I've been to San Diego. But I've been different places, whatever. But when I
Mm-hmm.
left Memphis, I was like, I had to get away from the hood, get away from the hood, like trauma running. So went everywhere else, and I always stayed in the nicer parts of town.
Mm-hmm.
Get to Syracuse. Syracuse is small. It's a small town, and there's a huge gap. Most of the brown people live in a small pocket called the South Side, and it's just like rough, super rough. There's a few other rougher parts, but it's like that's the roughest part. And I get here, and I don't see anyone in other areas. For the most part, they look like me. I'm like what? Where am I? Like what's going on? And when I go through certain areas, I will see people who look like me, but they're all like hanging out in the corner. And I know it was triggering, but afterwards it's like, why do I feel so agitated and I feel so sad and these like complex emotions? And it was because, again, trauma running, I never dealt with that part of my life, and it was super triggering. It was like reliving my childhood, even though I'm not living in that area, but going through those
Mm-hmm.
parts of town, it was like bringing up stuff from my
Yeah.
childhood of like, I was, man, it was rough. But again, I started going to therapy, and I realized like, oh, that's why I feel this way, and that this these complex emotions that was coming up again. The compartments start to all blend together, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it makes sense now. It makes sense. But yeah, like working on myself and just getting better. Now I my goals, it comes from like from my visions or like from meditate. So like you said, you have a course and y'all look at how would your life look if you hadn't gone through XYZ. So if like for me, when I'm meditating or I'm sitting quietly, I'm journaling, like how do I want my life to look in a good way, and then
Yeah.
that pulls me versus me on a treadmill running from like, oh, I don't want to be and I don't want to be
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
experiencing
That's the
lights
see,
off.
that's
I
the
don't want to experience
difference.
this.
Yeah, that's the difference from like the very first video that you say you came in contact with me. That's the
Yeah.
difference. Instead of me, I'm not ambitious because I'm running from something. Now
Hmm.
my ambitions are what I'm running to. That's the whole key. I'm not trying to get away from anything. Like right
Hmm.
now, I'm building a life that I never want to vacation from. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
take trips, but I'm not taking vacations. I'm in
Yeah.
love every day. So it's not a vacation to me. It's just this is where I am on this Wednesday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the way
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
looking at it. Like, nah, I don't it's not a you on vacation? Nah. This is just where I am today. That's it. I love every day.
Yes.
So that's what I'm running to. And I'm
Yeah.
close. I'm close. I'm close. I'm
And it's
close.
a journey though. It's not even a finish line. It's always like new
Yeah.
things to learn, new things to do,
Because we're
embrace.
always evolving and growing.
Hmm.
You are never your best self. You can be the best version of yourself right now, but you're never going to be your best self. So we're
Hmm.
always evolving, and as we're evolving, it's going to be it's going to be something else that we're going. Not that we can never be content, or not that we can never be in peace, but the more, like, every time I read a new book, it just a new good book, it just changed something in me.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I want to do something else. And that don't mean like I want to do something else, like I want to go somewhere different or buy something different. It's like, oh, I want to apply now. I want to apply this to my life to see how that, how that changes me, how that makes me better, how that allows me to experience joy more or experience gratefulness or happiness even more, how this allows me to be a better father, just so every time I read something good, oh man, I'm a little weird. So sometimes like I'm reading and then I start to meditate on it and I like feel it. I like feel it
Yeah,
like take a
it ain't
part of me. Like, okay,
weird.
all right, that's it. All right, that's in me now. That's in me now. I got it. I got it. I got it.
Yeah, no, it ain't weird. I know like one book that I read back in I think maybe 3 years ago. David Goggins. He just came out with a second book, but I can't think of the first book. But that book really did something to me,
Yeah,
like
it probably was
mental
stop being a
toughness.
bitch. David Goggins
Yeah,
is
he's hard,
he
but
is nuts, man.
but his story is so like he had a it was tragic for him, but he was
Uh-huh. Yeah.
he was like unrelentless. He kept on pushing, and he explains how he got through like this that mental toughness and doing hard
Yeah.
things. And when you do something hard that feels hard initially, you do it, and then you don't broke down the barrier. So when you come up to another obstacle, you have that mental discipline and that physical discipline to do the next obstacle. And just from knowing what I know now, some of his story, of course, trauma running, but hey, that's
Yeah.
not it's not me to judge. It's just how everyone
Hmm.
gets through their own stuff. But
Yeah.
it was super helpful. I'm talking about like I can do hard things, and just
Yeah.
it
Listen,
was good.
whenever I need a little motivation, I turn on some David Goggins, man. Just listen to him. Just listen to him go off, man. Because that's all he goes off, man. I love it. I love it, man.
So like, where can our viewers, our listeners, where can they find you? If they want to like get into a coaching program, get your books, hear what you say, hear your talk. Like, where can they find you?
Uh, Everything to contact me is at bfnkrumah.com. So that's BF. You see the last name on the screen right there, Nkrumah, all together, no dots, no dashes, bfnkrumah.com. So everything is on there. The courses, the books, whatever you may need. You can find me on social media at Coach Nkrumah on everything, whether it's TikTok. I don't really be on Twitter, but TikTok or Instagram, Facebook is BF Nkrumah. So, or just if you just Google BF Nkrumah, you can Google me.
Okay, got it. I'll make
I
sure I
pop
put
up.
your I,
I pop up on the Googles.
I'll make sure I put your that the link in the show notes
Okay,
when the show is released. But yeah,
no
Coach
problem.
McCrimmon, this is like powerful conversation and interview. I'm sure I'm going to ask you to come on again because now
No
I know
problem.
some of your background, and the next episode could be just about like your course, what you're doing, where you headed, like stuff like that. Just
Hey, listen,
some golden
definitely,
nuggets.
I definitely appreciate you having. I never take lightly that somebody wants to bring me on anybody's shows. I barely ever turn a podcast down. So I just, to me, I'm just always elated that somebody wants to actually talk to me. So, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you're doing. Pray that you continue to do the work that you're doing on yourself and allowing that to be able to help you be impactful in the world.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, y'all. That wraps it up. Again, Room for a Podcast. I'm Brittany. And if you want to be coached by me or, you want to contact me, find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I already put the information in the previous episodes, and I also put in the show notes. And we are out.